In part 1 of our exploration of tests of stellar evolution, we reviewed the properties of stars on the main sequence and looked at the major life cycles of low, intermediate, and high-mass stars, finally introducing the idea of observing populations of stars to test stellar evolution, introducing the young open clusters and the old globular clusters. We now turn to a detailed discussion of our tests of stellar evolution. As star cluster ages, stars move off of the main sequence in order of the highest mass stars to the lowest mass stars. The highest mass stars are the shortest lived, and the lowest mass stars live the longest. The way we make these observations is by choosing a cluster, like the Pleiades cluster here. The familiar seven sisters of the nighttime sky are not alone in space. They're only the seven brightest stars in a very rich open cluster containing nearly 1,000 stars. We can form a Hertzsprung-Russell diagram plotting luminosity versus color, and we can ask, what do we see in this cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagram? The very highest mass stars in a cluster's main sequence will tell you the cluster's age. In the case of the Pleiades, we're going to be seeing that the highest mass stars are A-type stars, with luminosities of a few tens of the luminosity of the Sun. Stars more massive than this have actually begun the process of evolving away into giants or supergiants. Indeed, you can see how the top of the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram here, the very most luminous stars are no longer on the main sequence. They're a bit to the right-hand side. They're slightly cooler. These are stars that are in the process of evolving away from the main sequence because they've run out of hydrogen deep in their cores. The lowest mass stars, however, are too young to have evolved away. They're still having plenty of hydrogen in their cores to fuse into helium, and so they remain on the main sequence. They can't become giants yet because they're not old enough yet. We can look at what we call the main sequence turnoff. The main sequence turnoff is defined by the most massive main sequence stars that remain in the cluster. Here's a Hertzsprung-Russell diagram for a somewhat older cluster, Messier 67, and you can see that it's quite different than the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram we showed for the Pleiades. It has a well-defined main sequence, but then it clumps and turns off, and we get a red giant branch over here, and only a tiny spattering of some unusual little blue stars. There are no main sequence stars more massive than those here at this turnoff, the place where it looks like the main sequence is turning over in the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. Now, there are a few stars up here, but they're going to turn out to be unusual. They're binary stars and objects called blue stragglers. They're not actually main sequence stars anymore, and indeed, these are actually helium-fusing stars in their core. But they're just a detail. This turnoff is very important to us because this turnoff is an indicator of the cluster's age. Older clusters will have lost all of their high-mass stars, and as a consequence, only low-mass stars will be on their main sequence. And remember, as you go to lower and lower mass stars along the main sequence, those stars become fainter and redder. As a consequence, an older cluster will have redder and fainter turnoffs. As time goes by, as progressively less massive stars leave the main sequence, leaving only the lowest mass stars behind, the cluster is going to become redder and fainter still. The overall effect is to give the appearance of the main sequence being peeled away from top to bottom in the HR diagram. Let's take a look at those clusters again. This is the Pleiades cluster. It turns out the Pleiades is a 100 million year old star cluster. It has a well-defined main sequence in its Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, but it has a very prominent turnoff here at A stars. These A stars have masses of about 2.5 times the mass of the Sun. The very most massive B stars have already begun the process of evolving away from the main sequence and are on their way to becoming supergiants, but they're not yet there yet, and so we can pin down the age of the Pleiades to about 100 million years. The second cluster we showed was Messier 67. This turns out to be a 4 billion year old cluster of stars. The most massive stars on its Hertzsprung-Russell diagram on its main sequence are F and G stars with a mass of about 1.3 times the mass of the Sun. 4 billion year old two solar mass star will no longer be on the main sequence, but will have evolved away onto the giant branch. And indeed, you can see stars here that are already becoming subgiants, and many stars that have evolved not only to the giant branch, but to the horizontal branch and the asymptotic giant branch as well. All of the stars that used to be on this part of the main sequence in the HR diagram have now evolved over into this zone in the HR diagram because they've run out of hydrogen. They're now giants and supergiants and horizontal branch stars. Let's follow the evolution of a series of star clusters of increasing age. I'm going to be choosing data for real clusters, but I'm going to draw them all in a uniform way to get the picture across. Here we'll start with a 1 million year old cluster. This is a cluster of stars that has a lot of O and B stars that have just recently formed. And indeed, you can see some of the remaining gas and dust out of which the star cluster had formed is still lingering around. This gas and dust has not yet blown away. These are very, very young stars indeed. In fact, in many ways you can think of it as they're still in the cradle. If I draw as a blue line the zero-age main sequence, we see from the very highest mass stars down, most of the stars have alighted on the zero-age main sequence. They are stably burning hydrogen into helium deep inside their cores. But notice that the lowest mass stars are not on the zero-age main sequence. These are stars that have not yet reached the main sequence because their cores are not yet hot enough for them to get all of their energy from hydrogen fusion into helium. Remember when we talked about the formation of stars? In star formation, the very most massive stars collapse down onto the zero-age main sequence and ignite hydrogen fusion in their cores very rapidly, in a few tens of thousands of years. But as stars get progressively lower and lower mass, it takes longer and longer for them to collapse down and get hot enough in order for hydrogen fusion to make up all of their energy needs. And indeed, in this particular cluster is still so young that these stars have not yet had a chance to reach the zero-age main sequence, and the very lowest mass of these may not reach it for a few 100 million years in the future. This is a characteristic HR diagram of a very young star cluster. Very, very massive stars, down to low mass stars on the zero-age main sequence, but the lowest mass stars have not yet reached the main sequence. Some of you may be sharp-eyed, may have noticed this lonely little point over here. That is the most massive star of all in this 1 million year old cluster. It has long since exhausted its hydrogen and is on its way to becoming a red supergiant. It will eventually go supernova, but not yet. Now we turn to a 10 million year old cluster. This is Chi Persei in the nighttime sky. We still see a lot of blue stars in here, but a few very, very bright red supergiant stars. If we make its cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, we find now that the most massive main sequence stars are now B stars. All of the O stars have evolved away. Indeed, they're on their way to becoming subgiants and supergiants over here. These are all red supergiants. Many of these stars down here, the low mass stars, are still on their way to the zero-age main sequence. Even after 10 million years, they haven't made it yet. But stars like the Sun have already made it and alighted down onto the zero-age main sequence. The red supergiants here are the remnants of the stars that used to be on this part, up in the upper mass part of the main sequence. They have evolved away, no longer burning hydrogen to helium in their cores, and are either collapsing helium cores, or perhaps these stars are either helium or carbon fusing stars, getting ready to either go supernova or begin shell ejection if they're intermediate mass stars. This is a slowly evolving cluster. By 100 million years, we've reached the age of the Pleiades. The Pleiades is now 100 million years old. All of the O and B stars have evolved away from the main sequence, and if they haven't gone supernova and vanished completely, are on their way to becoming red, or have become red supergiants. We see the very first of the white dwarf stars from the highest mass stars that can leave behind a white dwarf companion. And we see that now the lowest mass stars have nearly finished their trip all the way down to the zero-age main sequence. But sun-like stars, like our own down here, have long since been residing on the zero-age main sequence and are in the main sequence slowly fusing hydrogen to helium deep in their cores. If we now go to a billion-year-old star cluster, like NGC 2360, the first thing you notice is there are not as many blue stars in here anymore, but a lot of little red stars. And indeed, when we look at the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, the main sequence has become completely depopulated for A, B, and O stars. Only the F stars, stars with a mass of maybe 1.5 times the mass of the Sun, remain. We now see the beginnings of a subgiant branch and the beginnings of a base of a giant branch and a start of the building of a sequence of white dwarfs. And finally, the very lowest mass stars have begun to alight on the zero-age main sequence. By 10 billion years, the main sequence has been heavily depleted. Now only G, K, and M stars, stars the mass of the Sun and smaller, are left on the main sequence, and all of the stars that were up in the upper part have long since vanished, either as supernovae, and have left behind only neutron stars and white dwarfs. We see now the intermediate and the low mass stars beginning to evolve into the subgiant branch and climbing into red giants. A few of them have even begun to form a horizontal branch, stably burning helium into carbon in their cores, and 1 or 2 asymptotic giant branch stars. All of the lowest mass stars have now alighted on the zero-age main sequence, and we have a well-developed white dwarf sequence, with all these white dwarfs slowly cooling away. If we look carefully into old clusters like NGC 6791 here, we can see that they're mostly reddish and yellowish, befitting the fact that there are virtually no blue stars at all. And when we look really closely, for example with radio telescopes, we find neutron stars and pulsars, evidence of the very most massive stars that have long since gone supernovae and left behind neutron star cores. The effect, as we've seen through these different slides, is of the main sequence peeling away. Let's go back through the sequence very quickly. At 1 million years, you have a well-defined high-mass main sequence, and as you age, it slowly but surely peels away the main sequence until you're left with only the lowest mass stars in the main sequence, and all the high mass stars have evolved away. In this way, by making the color magnitude diagrams, the Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams of star clusters, we can actually get a snapshot of their appearance and can read off their age by finding the mass of the most massive stars in their main sequence located at their main sequence turnoffs. To review, open cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams show massive, hot main sequence stars, but only a small number of giants or supergiants. They have well-defined main sequence turnoffs and long, deep main sequences. We see a mix of low and high mass stars, but no horizontal branch or giant stars when these clusters are young. Open clusters are going to be our best laboratories for studying the properties of the very highest mass stars in the local universe. But it doesn't tell us a whole lot about low and intermediate mass stars because they've pretty well settled down onto their Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams and have long since settled into the main sequence, fusing hydrogen into helium in their cores. Globular clusters, by comparison, are very, very evolved. The Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams of globular clusters show an enormous number of evolved stars and only low-mass main sequence stars. Indeed, their light and their cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams are dominated by these evolved giants and subgiants, asymptotic giants, and even horizontal branch stars, as well as these long, thin main sequences. The cutoff here is just because the data that I'm using for this cluster, Messier 5, cut off at the lowest luminosities because this was a shallow set of data from the Hubble Space Telescope. What we see in a globular cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagram are mostly low-mass main sequence stars with masses of 1 to 2 solar masses and below, and the rest have either evolved into giants and horizontal branch stars or have become white dwarfs. Indeed, if we look deep into cluster Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams, we see they often have very, very thin, beautifully defined low-mass main sequences and very thin white dwarf cooling sequences. These are two spectacular Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams for old globular clusters that were obtained by some of my colleagues using the Hubble Space Telescope. The main sequences are extremely sharp, As we can see in these diagrams, these have all been cleaned up of possible confusion with intervening foreground and background stars. And we now see these well-defined low-mass main sequences going down to the very lowest mass red dwarfs we can detect with the Hubble. The little kink you see here at the top in 47 Tucani is the main sequence turnoff. And the main sequence turnoff is just visible here in NGC 6397. The color cluster HR diagrams that we were looking at before were really confined to these upper left-hand corners in these diagrams. So with the Hubble, we can push very deep. As we push deep, not only do we see the sequences of the red dwarf stars still on the main sequence, but we can see now these very thin, beautifully defined sequences of white dwarf stars. On the main sequence is a mass sequence. So we're seeing the highest mass remaining stars in clusters like 47 Tucani or NGC 6397. These are probably stars with about 1.2 to 1.1 times the mass of the Sun, all the way down to the hydrogen burning limit at about 8% the mass of the Sun. White dwarfs, however, form a parallel sequence, but this is not a mass sequence, this is a cooling sequence. White dwarfs are the exposed either carbon-oxygen or oxygen-neon-magnesium cores. Since carbon-oxygen white dwarfs are the most common because intermediate mass and low mass stars are much more common than intermediate mass stars, oxygen-neon-magnesium white dwarfs are extremely rare. So what we're seeing here is stars at the top of the white dwarf sequence are still hot and blue, and those at the bottom of the sequence are cool and red. These are stars that are older. The white dwarfs have had longer to cool off and fade away. And so it's these HR diagrams for globular clusters that are going to be excellent laboratories for testing out our ideas of low-mass stellar evolution. They're going to show us what the Sun is going to look like at the various stages that have yet to occur, and can give us an idea of how rapidly the white dwarfs cool. How rapidly the white dwarfs cool and the changes of their properties gives us important insights into the interior structures of these stars. What I hope you've taken away from this lecture on our tests of stellar evolution is that the grand story of stellar evolution, pieced together over the last 100 years or so, from the very first discoveries of the basic properties of stars, the measurements of their distances, the spectral classifications brought to their highest level of development by Annie Jump Cannon and others, and all the way through the discovery of nuclear fusion energy, the interior structure of stars, hydrostatic and thermal equilibrium, and the discovery of the life cycles of low and high mass stars through multiple nuclear fusion cycles, all has a very firm basis in observations. We can see the story of stellar evolution written in the Hertzsprung-Russell diagrams of clusters of stars that were born together, sharing the same age and the same composition. It's a marvelous story, and one of the most successful achievements of astronomy in the 20th and 21st century has been able to piece together the story of stars, stories that can last from millions to billions of years, and putting it together with careful observations over the course of only 100 years by studying the populations of stars.